everyone! Welcome to Art Business with Ness. I'm Ness and I'm here with a very special guest, Stacie Dale. Hi!
Hi, Ness. How are you?
I'm great. So, for
Good.
everyone who's watching right now, what you don't know is that this is actually the second time we met because the first time my recording got corrupted. So, Stacie is so generous to meet with me again to have this interview. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Happy to do it.
So Stacie is a great surface designer and she's also the editor and creator of Surface Design News. So we're going to have a great chat today. First of all, could you introduce yourself and tell us how you got started in surface design?
Sure. My name is Stacie Dale. I have a degree in fashion design from way back in 1992 from Drexel University. And I worked in the apparel industry for about 10 years after I graduated. And I loved that. It was fun. But I had my children and I really wanted to stay at home with them. So I started a work at home business where I painted like gifts and keepsake chests for people and signs and whatever anybody wanted painted, I would do. So I did that for a very long time. I just stopped doing that like a year and a half ago. So
Wow, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, I still sell products, but I don't do hand painted anymore. I do things that are, print on demand. But it was a nice little business to have for, all those years. But during that time, I also met some other artists online who were doing murals and hand painted stuff. And several of them had gotten licensed with this company called Dish and Spoon Productions, which was a children's wall art company. And so um, the one woman recommended me to the woman that owned the company, and she reached out, and I ended up, signing a contract with them, and it did not go well. This woman, like, she didn't pay people, and it was just, it was a mess. And some of the artists ended up suing her. I did not because I was like, I don't want to get into this, but yeah, it just sort of gave me a bad taste about licensing. And so I never pursued it so much after that. I did license with one other wall art company. It was very brief. And now I have a licensing agreement with a company in China. It's okay, but licensing has never been my main focus, I think. Um, so after that experience, I just sort of focused on selling my own products direct to customer, and then I started Surface Design News, which that came out of taking Bonnie Christine's immersion class, and that class was great for learning, about the industry and about Illustrator and how to do repeating patterns. I knew how to use Illustrator, but I didn't do it with repeating patterns, so that's kind of why I took the class. But I came out of that class feeling like there were a few pieces missing that just didn't get covered. And I felt like I could fill in those gaps. So I started Surface Design News, which is a monthly subscription newsletter. And I search for companies that are accepting artist submissions, and I publish them in the newsletter. And then I interview an artist every month, sometimes two artists, just to kind of get their ideas about like how they got into this, and just let them tell their story, to sort of help other people. And then there's also a list of resources if you want to make your own products. I usually feature a teacher in there. And then there's something called designer profiles, which is also put into a different email called Pattern Roundup, where anybody can send in their artwork, and then I send that email to my list of art directors. So it's a free way for people to get their work in front of other, art directors that maybe they hadn't thought of or just don't know. So, and then I also have directories where it has all of the companies that I've found. And those are divided up between like wall art, stationery, puzzles and paper goods, fabric and wallpaper, and licensing agents. So those are the five that I do. So it's a lot to keep up with, but yeah, I'm really happy to be able to help people, find find their way in this industry because it's not easy.
Yes, I mean, that's why I absolutely love your newsletter. I mean, I love it for multiple reasons. It's very affordable. That's always
Yeah, I
great for
mean,
starting artists. And it, like you said, it bridges a gap because there's a lot of people who come out of these courses that they've done now. They know how to create the art, but they don't know how to get started on the business side of things. How do I get the ball rolling? And
right.
so by providing the name of companies that they can submit to, it really helps because the research part, it can be so tedious, time consuming, and a lot
Very
of
time
time
consuming.
we end up finding companies that don't hire freelancers or don't license. They just get in-house artists uh,
Right.
and things like that. So by going with your list, either with the newsletter or the directories, people can get a list of companies to get started and start pitching today if they want to. So that's very amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that don't understand, like in these classes, they tell you, oh, there's, thousands and thousands of companies, that put artwork on products, and that's true. But like you said, a lot of them have in-house artists. Not all of them accept artist submissions. And so, you really need to find those ones that's their business model is licensing. So, and everybody wants to get into Target and anthropology and all those, but there's not a direct way in there. You have to do it either through an agent or at a trade show. That's pretty much it. There's no one sitting at those companies waiting for unsolicited portfolios to come in. Um, so I think people just don't know that coming out of the classes. So that's where I'm trying to like help them, understand like where you want to put your effort. Don't spend all your time on LinkedIn trying to find the buyer for, or the design director for Target's baby. It's not going to get you anywhere. So, I mean, there's probably a few companies where you can contact somebody and maybe get something, but it's not the normal route to go into those larger, big box store type of companies.
Yeah, for the big companies. Also, something that a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these companies they have white label brands, and they work with
Yeah.
manufacturers, so other brands that create the products and then sell them at Target. So Target is not even necessarily the person that
Yeah.
produces or hires the artist. You have to find those brands that are
The
sometimes,
manufacturer.
yeah, that are hidden and not really, they're not, they don't have a presence on social media and none of this stuff, so that can be a little
No.
bit complicated, but
Yeah.
there is definitely a way in with small to medium companies. And with the large companies, like you said, you have to get with an agency, which that can be very competitive. So while you try that, having a list of companies that you can also pitch to is a great alternative.
Yeah. And I think you look more attractive to licensing agents if you have a couple of licensing agreements already under your belt. So, like, go for those smaller companies first and then build it up a little bit. Like, don't shoot for the moon right away. It might not
Definitely.
go so well.
I agree with that so much. I actually recently signed with Pinklight Studio,
Oh, awesome. I love them.
which was my dream agency for
Yeah.
years.
You're
And I've been pitching to them for years and never got anywhere. And this year, finally, I think what helped me is that I have worked with a lot of companies. So being
right.
able to pitch to them saying, hey, I've worked with American Greetings, my art is there, my art is there. That's really helped me with the experience and the proof in the pudding. And
Right.
so for artists out there, you can build those little steps. You start working with small companies and then medium companies, and then you add up those contracts, and then you'll be interesting to an agency.
Exactly. Yep. That's the way to do it.
You mentioned licensing specifically, and that you yourself don't do it a lot in your own business. I find that so interesting because there's so many different avenues to do surface design. You can do your own products, you can do licensing. Also, you can do buyouts, which I wanted to hear your opinion about buyouts.
I love buyouts, frankly. I mean, I like them because you get paid up front. It's usually, you don't have to wait for your money, usually. And I usually invest that money if I do a buyout, and I end up making more from the investment than I do if I had waited, a year or two to have these smaller amounts trickle in. So I know a lot of people don't like doing buyouts because they think, I mean, it depends on the artwork too. Like there's some things I don't want to give up the rights to, and then there are people who want buyouts where they want the rights. So you have to weigh that. But in general, I like them. I mean, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, don't do that. To just do licensing," but I think there's pros and cons to both. So I like them.
Absolutely agreed. I think there's a little bit too much of licensing purists out there. And
Yeah,
buyouts absolutely do have their place, especially for simpler patterns, things that
yeah,
you're not necessarily attached to. And those more complicated things that took you longer to do, or the very popular patterns that can be licensed in multiple different industries, then those you can keep the copyrights. But getting paid $2,000 right away,
yeah.
that
I'll take it.
has and you said investing the amount that you get, that's a hack right there.
Yeah, you put it in a high yield savings account, and before the end of the year, you've made a pretty good chunk of money. So I just prefer doing that. But like you said, it does depend on the artwork. If it's something simple and you don't really care about it, just sell it, get it out of your life, get some
Yeah.
money.
I'm
But it does
my
depend.
my very first licensing deal that I ever did after I came from picture book illustration. And so in 2021,
Mhm.
I did my very first gig. So excited. It was 5% royalty, no advance. And I'm still receiving royalties for that. But
That's
it took
awesome.
about a year and a half after I signed to start getting checks. And I was
Checks, yeah.
just following up, like, where's my
You're like,
money?
where's my money?
They were like, the
Yeah,
product isn't even on the shelves yet. It's only been 10 months.
yeah, I know. I mean, I think that's something too people don't understand is the manufacturing process overseas is so far ahead, and it takes a long time to, from the design to getting prototypes to approving samples to, getting it, finding the factory, getting it made, and then having it shipped and then get to the warehouse and then you got to separate it all. And then, so it's a very long process that I think people may not understand. They just think, oh, here's my art, you're going to make it, and we're done. But
Yeah.
it's a very long time before you get paid. Um, so I think that's another thing that just isn't that clear when people get into this, that, they expect that they're going to make money right away, and you're not. It's going to
Yeah.
be a while.
I
You're going to
mean,
wait.
so that deal is a 5-year deal. And so
Okay.
I calculating the amount of money that I made for the first 2 years and kind of approximating, I think by the end of everything, I'm gonna have made about $3,000 from that one pattern, which is a really good deal. But it's gonna have taken
Yeah,
6 years to get the
get
whole
to that.
amount.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's the long game, It's not a quick. I don't know why people get into this and think they're going to make quick money. That's not how this works at all.
no.
I mean, unless you're just strictly doing buyouts, and even then, I mean, there's a season to certain things, so you have to wait. Like if your artwork is for holiday, that's usually done a whole year ahead. So, you have to kind of time yourself of when you're showing your work too. But yeah, it's not quick money. It's a long
No.
game.
I love to try to have a mix of both because then you get the best of both worlds. You have some money
Yeah.
now, and then you're also building kind of your passive royalties coming in. So
Yeah.
both have their place, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of concerns right now in the surface design industry with a bunch of different things happening. So I wanted to ask your opinion about some of those things. First of all, I really wanted to hear what you're thinking about AI art. Are you worried about that? What are you doing about that?
I am worried about AI art for a certain type of artist. I think it's going to affect probably graphic design people a little more than, fine artists, or I don't know that it's ever going to replace, handmade art or hand painted or hand drawn. Um, I can see it replacing some computer art maybe, but I think it's going to have a bigger effect on graphic designers, because the AI now, you can, I mean, if you need a logo, you just type in, I need a logo for this, and it will give you hundreds and hundreds of choices. And so, that's a little bit unsettling, I think, for that industry to like have something that pretty much does their job. So, but I think if your artwork is, unique enough and it's either hand drawn or hand painted, I'm not so worried about it. I honestly don't think that that's ever going to go away. I just feel like AI has its place. It's not that I don't like AI. I don't really like AI art, but I like AI in general for other things. I mean, it's great technology, but I do worry about it in the sense that, people's artwork is getting scraped from, their websites and stuff, and you really have to protect yourself against that. And it's hard. I mean, there's things like Nightshade and what's the other one?
Glaze.
Glaze, yes. That you can do, but that's time consuming. And so, and not everybody knows how to do that. So, I'm definitely concerned about it in that sense, that it's, an easier way for people's work to get stolen and not really be noticed. But as far as it affecting artists, I think most of us are going to be okay. That's just my feeling about it. I think we'll be
Yeah.
okay.
We can't know for sure exactly what's going to happen with AI art, how good it's going to get, which jobs are going to be targeted. And at first, I worried about it a lot myself too. But I think I've come to a place of acceptance of like, what am I going to do? Just stop?
Right. Like, you're not going to stop making art the way you make art just because of AI. And I think that's true for pretty much everybody. And I don't know that, like, I mean, there may be some companies, and I would think they're probably more overseas companies, that might try and use that technology to do something cheaply and easy. But I think for companies that are putting out a quality product, now that I've sort of seen a lot of the AI art, I mean, you can tell like right away that it's AI. So I just feel like, time will tell, but I don't know that companies that have been making products a certain way for so long, I don't think they're going to change to all of a sudden making AI art products. It just doesn't, I don't think that's how they're going to do it. It wouldn't make sense for them to do that. I mean, if they've got a good thing going, stick with the good thing.
Absolutely. And as you said, banking on your own uniqueness definitely is the way to go. And the ways that make your art different from AI, so that could be traditional media or hand painted, or it could be your own unique style, but definitely not try to fit in with what everyone else is doing, but doing something that stands out, that a company that is looking for quality, for freshness, for different, then is going to hire you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things too when people come out of these classes, is that, I mean, I've had art directors tell me they can tell which people have taken which class because the artwork they're showing them looks exactly so similar. And that's a mistake. I think people need to spend time. I mean, it's great to learn the skills, but you need to spend a lot of time making art, like a whole year. Just spend the year making art, and you will figure out what your, signature style is, and you'll find out how to make it different than everybody else. If you're making just, simple vectors that are not, they're nothing special, they're nothing out of, the ordinary, it's not going to go well for you. There's thousands of people trying to get these licensing deals. So, if you're coming in with a very basic, artwork, I just don't think that, I think your time is better spent creating artwork and getting to a point where you feel like, yeah, this is me. This is what I really like.
Absolutely.
And, give yourself time to figure out like what you really like. I thought I was going to love making, vector art, and I don't. I mean, I'm a Photoshop girl. I like doing, hand painted and hand drawn and then putting it in Photoshop and then doing my repeats in there. But, you just never know until you start practicing it. And then, you figure out like, all right, I don't really like this, or I love this. So, give yourself the time. Don't be in such a big hurry.
Yeah. I think that's something that's very scary for illustrators, especially starting out, to come out with a unique style and say, this is me. We kind of all have this human mindset of, when in Rome, and trying to imitate what everyone else is doing, thinking that following the pack is what is going to help us succeed. But like you, I strongly believe that in the arts, you really have to make yourself apart and stand out, and that can be very scary, but that's also the way to success.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that, there are people who think like, oh, if I just do it like this person's, I'll get a licensing deal. And that's the opposite of what you want to do. You really, I mean, definitely do your research on companies and see what their style is. If you don't mesh with their style, then that's not the company for you. But there are companies out there for everybody. Like you will find a company that, wants to do business with you.
The other thing that I really wanted to ask you about is, the rates in surface design have been stagnating for years. Are you worried about that? And what do you recommend that artists do about that?
I'm a little concerned about that. I think I'm concerned about the economy overall because I've seen a couple of companies go out of business this year. And I do see not as many opportunities as I think there were just even 2 years ago. So, I think you really have to fight for the rates that you want. It's upsetting, like if you're in one of the Facebook groups that I've been in a couple illustration ones, and people are asking, oh, I need this illustrated, and people will do it for like $5. And that doesn't do them any good, and it doesn't do anybody else any good. If you're going to do work for $5 and I want $100 to do that same work, and that's really what it should be, you're undercutting everybody, and that's not the way to go about it, because you'll get a reputation as being cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want that. Like, you always want to stick to, what is this really worth? Like, what do I want for it? That's your price. There is no magic formula for picking a price. I mean, certain licensing deals will give you like 3 to 5%, and that's just their standard. That's the company standard. You can try and ask for more. I mean, it's a negotiation. I think that's another thing, is that somebody gets like a licensing deal and they're like, I'll take it, but you should negotiate it, because they're expecting you to negotiate it. If you take the first thing they offer, it might not be as much as you could have gotten. Mm-hmm. So, and if they come back and say, sorry, we can't do that, just say, okay, I'll make it work.
Yeah. That's all. People are so afraid that they're going to walk away if they try to stand up for themselves. But the worst that can happen usually is they say, no. And you say, oh, well, I'll take it anyway. That's the worst that could happen.
Yeah, that's the worst that can happen. So, you have to kind of, weigh those things before you jump at everything. I think everybody right now is just like desperate for something and they're jumping at things. And I mean, that's to the company's benefit, because they can, probably find somebody cheaper. If they have two very similar artworks, and this person will take 3% and you want 5%, they'll go with the 3% person. But that's usually not the case. If they're contacting you, it's because they love your artwork. Mm-hmm. So, they want you to, design for them. So don't be afraid to ask for what you want or what you need. If they, like you said, if they come back and say no, that's okay. You can either take it or leave it. Those are your choices.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to walk away either. If the deal isn't right, there's going to be another one in the future that's going to be right to your standards.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm guilty of that. I've taken jobs and then afterwards I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? This is taking way longer than I thought it was. But you live and learn, and you do have to negotiate. I mean, it's just part of this business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people aren't comfortable doing it, but if you want to make the most money and you want to make a living at this, you're going to have to learn how to do it. So
yeah. Negotiating is part of business. And as artists, we are running a real business. If we treat it like it, then we have to negotiate too.
Exactly.
And I love what you said, that if you're the one that charges $5, then you gain that reputation. People start coming to you, not because they love your art, but because they know, oh, you're that one that's going to do it for $5.
$5.
It becomes very hard to increase your
do all this
prices.
work for $5. Yeah, you can't increase your prices after that. I mean,
No,
everybody's going to come to you, but you're
for the
doing 10
wrong
times the work.
reasons. Yeah,
Like it's silly. So yeah, stick to your guns and ask for the price that you think it's worth. And ask
absolutely.
other artists. It's definitely worth like reaching out to some other artists in that same company and just sort of say, hey, they're offering me this. Is this good? Is this is my first time doing it? Just be honest. Just say, I don't know what I should be expect from this. And you'll be surprised at how nice people are about it. Like they will be more than happy to help you because they've been in your position before. So,
Yeah. The
don't
art
don't be
director is
afraid.
the art director is just a person, and
Yeah.
they're not so scary.
No, no. I mean, you have to have tenacity. You have to have like a strong backbone and just know that you're going to get a lot of no's. That's the way this works. But you'll get a couple good yeses, and that can mean everything. That can mean a whole lifetime career. There are people who have worked for certain companies for decades because they produce really good work. So, don't ever feel like you can't talk to the art director. Like you said, they're just a person. They're just trying to get through the day like everybody else.
And what I love about your career too is that you make a lot of your own products, and that's also a good option for us artists. We don't have to wait for the company that is going to give us our chance. If the
Right.
rates that they are offering us isn't good enough, then we can also create our own things. And nowadays there's so many resources for us to do that. So that's also an option, you know.
Yeah, I think for me, like I love making products. Like that's, I'm crafty. I like doing that stuff. But there's so many things now with print on demand, and I mean, print on demand's not fantastic because the margins are pretty small. But there's other things like Amazon KDP. You can do journals. You can do activity books. You can write your own story. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different avenues now where you can make an income. Like sticking just to one thing is probably going to be difficult because you're not going to be making the big bucks. I mean, these designers that are making big bucks are teaching classes. That's how they're making their money. It's not from licensing. um, and that's okay. Maybe that's an option for somebody. Like you have something you can teach, try and teach. You can charge for that. But yeah, I think having multiple streams of income, and I know everyone says this, is a good thing. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room when things aren't going like super great in licensing. You have your other options. So, you
Yeah.
don't want to. And I also think some artists are like embarrassed to have like a part-time job or something. And it's like, no,
Mm.
like everybody has to pay the bills. Like,
Absolutely.
don't be embarrassed to have a part-time job and do this on the side. It's totally fine. Like no one's expecting you to, not pay your bills. And, I do think people get this idea in their head that they've got to make it in this business and this has got to be their full-time income. And that's just not the case for a lot of people. I mean, there's a majority of people who have another part-time job and then do this as well. So, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and for me, coming from the picture book world, I found that surface design is both easier and harder at the same time because in picture books, you can just take maybe 2 or 3 book projects per year, and that can give you a good, $50,000 right there. That's your year. But
Right.
it can be difficult to get those projects because they're big projects. It's the big bucks, so the company will be very hesitant to give it to you. You have to do a lot of convincing. In surface design, it's kind of easier to get a contract, a small contract, because you show them the art. If they like it, they buy it. It can be a short transaction sometimes, but it's harder to build up to the point where you can do this even part time because
Yeah.
it would take consistent contracts month in, month out. It would take a quantity of them, but we can maybe build it up after a few years to a point where, it makes us a part-time income, maybe half of our income, and then the rest can be with our own products or with maybe some part-time studio work or any of the other avenues that there are. But I did notice that building that income to a livable amount in
Livable wage.
surface
Yeah.
design seems to be difficult than in some other markets of illustration, in my experience.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think illustration is a much more steady income. And because the projects are usually bigger money, where, with licensing, like you said, you have to wait a long time to get paid in like these
Mm-hmm.
little dribs and drabs. And, sometimes that's okay. But I have to say that I saw somebody the other day on Facebook who asked in a group, they said, I'm going to quit my full-time job because I want to do illustration full-time. And they wanted to know, like, if that was a good idea or not. And I thought, if you've never done illustration at all, this is a horrible idea. Like, don't get, I think they thought that they were just going to be able to get an illustration job. And it's competitive. I mean, it's not like you can just walk in and say, "Hey, I want to draw this for you." It's very competitive. But, the price tags are a little higher there than they are in surface design. But there are quite a few people I've seen who think that like they're just going to quit their full-time job and like either go into surface design, and they're like, how do you guys like, how long did it take for you to make money? And I'm like, some people it takes years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if there was a woman who was making $90,000 and she wanted to know if she could make that like doing surface pattern design, and everyone's like, no, 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 no. Like,
I mean,
you're
it
not.
is it is possible, but it would take years to build up to that point.
Right, right.
And you probably would need an agent's help as well so that you can hit those bigger companies that have, bigger quantities so the royalties can add
Yeah,
up, or to
yeah.
build your own brand that kind of blows up.
Right. Like, there's not, don't quit your $90,000 a year job and expect that like you're going to make that same amount the first year in surface design. It's almost unheard of. And so um it is amazing to me that like how many people I've seen who just feel like frustrated because they're not making a full-time income from it
Mm.
yet. And it's like, again, it's a long game. This is not super easy to do, and it takes time. Like, that's all
Yeah.
there is to it. It takes time.
I absolutely believe that where there's a will, there's a way, and that it's possible to make a good living in surface design. But we have to be strategic about it, and it can be a process that takes multiple steps to build up
Yeah,
to that point. And then we can also use other revenue streams to help us achieve that.
exactly. That was perfect.
Great. Well, I would love to know what are your next goals for your career and for Surface Design News as well. What are you doing next?
Well, right now, I just signed a contract to illustrate a series of 6 children's books for an independent author. It's a
Congrats.
father-daughter team. Yeah, and I love the stories. Like, I'm really excited about it, and they paid me already. Like, they're so awesome. So, yeah, it was. I mean, I've had other illustration jobs that did not go that smoothly. Like, it was a lot of difficulty, but so far this has gone really smoothly, and I absolutely love the stories that they wrote. So I'm excited about that. But that'll keep me
Wonderful.
busy for quite a while, I think.
Yes, it
So
will.
if there's 6 of them, yeah. So, um, and then with Surface Design News, I'm still going with it. It is getting harder every month to find companies. I mean, I've been doing this now for 3.5 years, and I think we're well over 500 companies at this point that I've found. But um, yeah, I don't know what I'll do. I mean, sometimes I think about selling it because I want to do more illustration work. But I do love writing, and I do love doing the newsletter. It's just one of my favorite things to do. I love doing research, and like that allows me to really dive into that. So we'll see. I'll keep going, I think, as long as I can keep going. I mean, when I run out of companies, I run out of companies.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Well,
So that's it.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Stacie, for your time, for coming here, for so many great tips that you gave us. It was wonderful.
Oh, thanks, Ness. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
So I'm going to put your links on the screen and in the description for your own website, Instagram, and as well as Surface Design News website and Instagram. I really recommend everyone check out the Surface Design News if you're in this market. It's a wonderful resource. I love it, and it's so affordable too. It's just all around great. How amazing was that interview? Thank you so, so much, Stacie. If you enjoyed the video, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.